Stay tuned for today's episode of Breaking the Biz, an informative podcast where we dive into the world of entertainment by interviewing seasoned professionals who have made their mark in the industry. Gain invaluable insights as they share their personal journeys, offering advice on navigating the dynamic landscape of the entertainment industry. Whether you're an aspiring actor, musician, filmmaker, author, animator, or any creative soul, tune in for expert career guidance, insider tips, and first-hand accounts on breaking into the entertainment industry. Get ready to unlock the secrets behind successful careers and fuel your own passion for the limelight. Please remember to like this video and to subscribe to our channels for more great conversations.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz, presented by Yes I Can Unity through Music and Education. I'm your host, William Felber, here to guide you through the fascinating world of the entertainment industry as seen through the eyes of those who shape it. As we prepare to dive into a conversation moderated by co-host Brett Lieberman, we'll explore various perspectives from entertainment industry leaders, innovators, and visionaries. Join us for an episode filled with stories of adaptability, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of cinematic excellence.
Welcome to Breaking the Biz podcast with the Yes I Can crew. We have got a great guest with us tonight. We have Mr. Michael Orenstein, who is a voiceover artist and a copywriter out of Los Angeles, California. His home studio is equipped with Source Connect Standard, a Sennheiser 416 and a Neumann U87, and a Polo Twin. He voices a wide array of work, including commercials, animation, video games, audiobooks, corporate narration, e-learning, and medical narration. He has a degree in cellular molecular biology from the University of Michigan, and he's toured throughout the world as a stand-up comedian for 15 years. On top of that, like I mentioned, working on several game shows, appeared in dozens of commercials, short films, and theater projects. He's taught improvisation and acting at the Lee Strasberg Institute for several years before focusing on voiceover. He has voiced over hundreds of commercials in video games, dubbing projects, and animated shows over the past 17 years. In 2016, he began teaching voiceover techniques and character creation to students whose ages range from 3 to 70. One of Michael's students is his 13-year-old son, Avi, who was diagnosed as being on the spectrum when he was 8 years old. So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight, Michael. Let's talk about, so it kind of sounds like you got theatrics in the background, you did stand-up comedy, voiceover. When did you get bit by that bug where you knew you wanted to either be in front of a camera or, entertaining individuals?
Kindergarten?
What was it in kindergarten?
I don't know what it was, but I remember when people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And if anybody said anything other than actor, I would say, oh, you're lying. I couldn't imagine not wanting to be a comedian or an actor. I just really thought everybody in the world, that's what everybody secretly wanted, because that's all I wanted. But my parents weren't happy with it because my grades were too good, they told me. That's only for people with bad grades to do that. So it was a fight during my, growing up. I did theater, probably starting, the first play I was in was around 9. And then did theater up through college, although that's not what I majored in, obviously. I majored in cellular and molecular biology. And then when I got out of college, I got into grad school, and I decided I did not want to go to grad school. So I became a touring comedian.
Let's take 2 steps back before we talk about touring comedian. Molecular biology, that's not something that you just pull out of left field. What inspired you to study that?
Okay. I was fortunate in a lot of ways that the people I went to school with, I had a group of 10 or 11 friends that were all brilliant. So we were very competitive with each other. And most of us wanted to become physicians. And our big thing was, what's the hardest, when we went to college, it was, what is the hardest degree you can take that leads to going to medical school? And that's what it was when I was, because you have to do quantum mechanics, quantum physics, you have to do organic chemistry, all this stuff that's above and beyond what you would do with just a medical degree. Because we were so snotty about it. We were going to become doctors and researchers. That was what my friends and I were all going to do. And most of them did do that, just not me. By the
And,
time I was done with college, I realized I had denied what I really wanted to do. And I started doing, I thoroughly enjoyed cellular and molecular biology. I enjoyed doing research. But when I got out of undergraduate school and I saw what research really entailed when you don't have a graduate degree yet, it just wasn't the life for me.
okay. What did
Because
your
it's
folks
meaning
say?
label.
What did your folks say when you said, "Yeah, I think I'm not going to do grad school and I'm going to pursue stand-up comedy"?
Um, well, luckily I went to school on a scholarship, so they didn't owe any money, so there's not much they could have said. They were not happy. Uh, they really weren't happy. They never understood it. Uh, just before my dad passed, we were at a hospital and I made the nurse laugh, and my dad looked up and he said, my son was a comedian for many years. And that was the only time he called it that, because he usually called it being a smartass. So it was like this really nice moment for me, because he passed away shortly thereafter, but it was a nice moment that he acknowledged that, yes, this is something that I do and did.
Okay.
But they never understood it. They thought I never worked a day in my life,
Talk me
which is not
through
true, everybody.
yeah, talk me through making that transition to doing stand-up comedy. How do you go about getting booked?
Sure.
Walk me through that.
So I was in university in the 80s, and my school had a comedy club on campus. And we'd get people like Tim Allen would come in. I knew Tim really well, if you know who he is. And they needed students to open for the big acts. So I started doing that. And then about a year in, somebody told me that there was this guy that booked restaurants and bars all over Michigan, which is where I went to school, uh, for comedy. And I went and I did a contest there, and I got work. So while I was still in college, I would travel and do stand up in terrible places, Brad, terrible places. I remember one place I went in, and there was just three women eating soup, and that was the whole crowd. And they did not want to be disturbed from their soup. My job was to disturb them. Um, but and then when I graduated and got into grad school, I was going to go to grad school in San Diego, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, in St. Louis, there's a place that books like 20 clubs throughout the country. Why not, just for the fun of it, you should audition for them, just see what they say." So on my way out to grad school, I stopped in St. Louis and I auditioned, and they gave me work. And I thought, well, that's the sign. I really didn't want to go to grad school. I was kind of burnt out. I don't know if anybody's burned out with school, if you know that feeling. So then for the next 15 years, I toured 45, 50 weeks a year doing stand up throughout the US, Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, England.
So you've been
Until
comedy has really taken you all over the place.
it has. I've been, it was really great. And I got to meet very interesting people. And it was a hard job at first, because for me anyway, it took me a while to translate being funny at home to being funny on stage. So you definitely stand there in front of a lot of people staring at you, and you can see in their eyes they think I wasted my money, and you're standing there talking to them. But that changes over time, and I got better, and I got to where I was headlining and enjoying it. And in the back of my mind, there was always, I love cartoons. And when I came out to LA, I wrote on a couple of cartoons, and I always wanted to do voiceover. And then when my son was born 18 years ago, my wife said, well, I don't want you traveling anymore. And I said, well, I know what I'd really like to do. If I'm not going to be able to travel anymore, I'd really like to do voiceover, because you can do that predominantly from home. As far as getting work as a stand-up, it's much easier now than when I started doing it, because of the internet. You can post, everywhere you go, you can film yourself and you can post it. Whereas when I was doing it, you had to rent a camera for a couple $100 and hope that the audience was going to be good that show, and then you mailed out those big VHS tapes to everybody. So then I just made that transition. I also did a lot of sketch comedy and improv comedy over the years, because I just love comedy, as you can tell from how funny I'm being right now. It's always hard being interviewed, and like, he's funny too, and you're like, I gotta answer your questions. So it was just kind of a natural shift for me. And I had taken theater, like I said, I'd done acting throughout my life and taken some theater in college. And then I came out here and decided that I wanted to be an on-camera actor, which went okay, but not great. And it really takes a lot of time, and the competition is really tough, and looks are so important, which they aren't with voiceover. So when I made that shift, I found I really, really enjoyed it. And I have to say, compared to people that did stand up, compared to writers, compared to on-camera people, voiceover people are incredibly nice and welcoming and helpful and loving of each other. It's a very different experience. It's as though we aren't in competition, even though we are. So it's a very
It's
nice
funny.
place to be.
It's funny you mention that, and we've heard in the past having individuals, casting directors and other individuals who are in the voiceover realm, do
Mhm.
talk have similar sentiments that everyone kind of helps one another. There's not the superficial looks and the competition that being in front of the camera has. Um, we've heard from some coaches who have talked about that voiceover, you still are an actor, you're still using
Mhm.
your voice. uh you're doing it behind the camera, or not even with the camera, but at the same time you still need to get locked into the characters. um and a voiceover artist is truly an actor in the end. Would you agree on
Absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. It's the same skill set. And in some ways, it's easier. In some ways, it's harder, because we have to do everything with just the voice. So I have to kind of use my voice in a way that lets you know that I just turned around, or I'm not looking at the person I'm speaking to, or I just put my arm around whoever I'm talking to. I need to convey all the action with just my voice, even if they're going to animate it, because what happens with the animation, we record first. So they decide some of the action based on the way we record it. So your job is to kind of give them motion and movement, aside from being truthful for the character. Uh, it's also very different, because with voiceover, a lot of times you don't get the script in advance. You'll walk in and they'll hand you the script, and you're just supposed to do it. Unlike when I was in theater or on camera, where you memorize the script. So you've had this time with it, and you've really broken down the character. We have to do it much, much quicker and still be as believable.
Talk me through the
Uh,
transition. You knew that you loved cartoons. The wife kind of gave you the ultimatum. Traveling, not so much a good thing anymore. Needs you
right.
home. You make that transition. in order to start getting jobs, did you at that point put together a reel? How did you get an agent?
I I
Talk
took
me through those
classes.
steps.
Okay, sure. So I took one-on-one coaching classes with with a well-known coach out here, and I kind of put myself into her hands, and I said, just let me know when you feel I'm ready to make a demo, because I didn't want to. What happens is some people make demos. They're so anxious. They make a demo early, and they're not good enough to compete, and they send that out there, and then that first impression is so important. Their first impression people send out is that they're not very good, and I didn't want that to happen to me. So I took probably about 6 months worth of classes, and I'd already been teaching acting, on camera acting at the Lee Strasberg. So I mean, I knew how to act. I was just learning how to do commercials specifically, and the different little tricks and turns that you do with voiceover. And then I did a demo, and yeah, I started looking for work. There's work you can find without an agent, and that's a lot more now than when I started 17, 18 years ago. The Twitter has work. You can find work on Facebook. You can find work on the web without an agent. And then I work towards getting an agent, because
How'd,
that's where you get like animation and stuff.
how'd you go about so you have the reel? Was your reel more animation based? Was it more commercial based? Was it a mix of all of the above?
So your demos are going to be separate. They used to be all together in one, but that was a long time ago. Now you have an animation reel, you have a video game reel, and you have a commercial reel. And then if you want, you can also do a narration reel, or like I have a medical thing, because of my degree, I do a lot of medical work, medical narration. But basically, you don't if you mix your animation with your commercial, no one's gonna. It just sounds like you don't know what you're doing. Like you got bad advice.
Interesting.
I didn't. My first agent, I did not have an animation reel. I didn't get one of those because commercial reel is the number one. That's where most of the money is in commercials. Plus, it's been explained to me that you can be hired for animation from your acting on a commercial reel, but you can't be hired for a commercial from an animation reel. So they want that commercial reel first. And then once I started making money, I went and did my commercial reel and my animation and my video game reel.
After you
And
get
I've
your,
gone through several agents.
I was just gonna
After,
say, after you get your first job, is it easier, like, to start getting jobs? No.
nope, no, it doesn't work like that unless you get something that's really high profile. Let's say you get on The Simpsons or something. Well, that's going to help you out. Or a really high profile commercial campaign sometimes, but really, even people I know that work all the time and have worked all the time for 10, 15 years, most of the time they're still auditioning for almost everything. It's just because none of us are famous. And I think that's one of the reasons why voiceover people are friendlier, because we're not looking to be recognized. So we're not in that same kind of competition where, I want to walk down the street and have people go, oh, look how that is. They don't know. The only people that know me are really, really into voiceover. And you get those people.
And I'm sure there is a big group of people who do follow the voiceover actors and actresses. And I mean,
Sure.
obviously, you mentioned The Simpsons, but the one lady who does the voice of Bart doing all of those different characters,
Mm-hmm. Nancy
guys, girls,
Cartwright.
it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, extremely well known up to that point. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems like it's kind of hard because so many of these movies now use high profile actors and actresses to do the voices. So it's like it cuts
Yes.
into the people who are just that's been their bread and butter up to this point.
Yeah. What it is now, as far as the big movies, I remember I was at a convention There's a lot of voiceover conventions, and somebody said they want to be a main voice on a DreamWorks cartoon. And the person that they were asking the question of said, well, that's never going to happen because that only goes to movie stars. Now, you can be voices in a DreamWorks cartoon. You can be additional voices, smaller voices. But the stars, because they need to raise money, and the way they raise money for movies is by star power. Because they raise the money, a lot of the money is raised by retirement funds around the country. So, let's say there's the Farmers Retirement Fund in Iowa that's looking to invest. And they're going to invest in a movie. And if you tell them we've got this great movie, it's going to do really well, and they've never heard of any of the actors, they're less likely to do it than, hey, and you'll get to hang out with Tom Hanks. Ooh. So that's kind of why they use big names. I think they do it too much. I don't think they need to load every character as a big name. But there is, as far as the animation goes, there's so much stuff now. There's so much voiceover because of streaming services and anime, which is very, very popular. I don't know if any of your guys like anime, but that's
There are
something that
people,
actually,
there are people on this call that love anime, love the animation. There's individuals that are looking to pursue, the Netflix, material. And you're absolutely right. They have all shared that, even voiceovers, with Netflix having so many different movies from different countries and then having to dub it over.
Mhm.
There seems like there's work, and you're absolutely right. There are so many streaming platforms out there. It's crazy how we went from regular TV cable to everyone having to have a streaming service, and then you start adding up all your streaming services, you're paying as much as you were complaining about the cable. But yes, there is a plethora of options for people to watch.
There is, and I personally think we're in kind of a golden age of animation right now, because when it was network and they had an animated show, they needed to get millions of people to watch it every week to make it worthwhile for them, money wise. Whereas with streaming services, they don't need audiences that big. They can be more targeted, so they can be more mature or funnier. They don't have to play to the lowest common denominator. If that makes sense, Brett?
Yeah, makes
So
total sense.
I think you'll see a lot of shows. Not that network didn't always have some great ones, but if you watch a lot of the shows on streaming, they can really take chances. They can really find their niche audience because they only need a few 100,000 to make it worthwhile.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
there's great
and
money in voiceover. How do you we talk about the importance of understanding a gig economy, especially coming out of COVID. We
right.
were learning in class yesterday, about 50 to 60% of the workforce is going to be gig economy. So I'd imagine voiceover, it's not like you do a voiceover for a Ford vehicle and you're then hired on with Ford to do voiceover for many other cars. So you are
No,
technically going from project to project, whatever you're interviewing. How sustainable of an income for somebody who is trying to get into this competitive field? Can you talk me through um, how often you land gigs? Just understanding that gig economy so they know what they're getting themselves into.
sure. Well, it is a job with a lot of rejection, and not even so much rejection as never hearing back. You send off your audition, and you never hear another word. 99% of the time. Even if you're doing well, if you're really, 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 really top of the line, you're still not hearing back 80, 90% of the time. 10% booking 10% is great. Um, so what you need to do is keep a bunch of different categories. You can't just lean on animation, because unless you get on a series, you're not making enough money. And even now, series are really short. They used to be 26 to 52 episodes a year for animated shows. And now a lot of times they're 8 or 9. So you need a lot more than one. So I do audiobooks, and I do a lot of narration. And that's where I make the most of my money over the course of the year. That's kind of my background money. It's like my day job. It's still voiceover, but it's not as exciting as getting a commercial or doing an animated or video game project. When those come up, that's great. It's very rare. You can get, let's say you do a Ford commercial and it's part of a campaign. Well, then you might get, 2 or 3 years out of it where you're working with Ford exclusively, and that's a lot of money, but that's very rare. Most people do a little of everything. Most people, you expect, like all small businesses, odds are you're not going to make money for the first year or so. So I always tell people not to quit their day job until they're making enough money to replace their day job. Because it's real easy to get a few bookings and you're all excited. You're like, oh, I'm just going to do this full time. And it comes and goes. You can't guarantee that you're going to work all the time. So you have to be prepared for, going a few weeks, a month, 2 months, with very little. And then a lot comes in, and then very little. And it's very cyclical. So it is a gig economy. What's nice about it is, compared to, say, the new type of gig economy, like Uber or Lyft or Fiverr, where it's almost impossible to make a profit off of those. I've spoken to people that have driven for Uber or Lyft, and it really, you can drive like crazy and you just barely make any money, which is, with voiceover, if you're booking at all, you're making money. But like everything else, you have to put money in to get started. You have to train, because
So
the
let's
competition is all trained.
let's talk about that. So you mentioned two things. You got to put in the work, and I loved how you mentioned you knew you weren't ready yet for the demo. You needed to work with a coach and make sure that you were ready. There's no reason to rush it and put out a crappy product, which is not going to help open up doors. The other part is,
Right.
you mentioned that it is expensive, and um, to get the proper equipment and be able to do it from home. Obviously, COVID taught us in every realm of entertainment, from animation to voiceover, you have the ability to do things at home. We had somebody with Disney who mentioned during COVID they would send to the actors' houses the recording equipment so they could record from their own house. So you're in that position where you got to have all your own equipment. The days of probably going to a studio to record a not a demo, but an audition,
An
you have
audition.
to be able to do
Most don't
everything
happen
from
anymore.
home. And I imagine you also edit from home as well.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
want to
So
talk about some of the equipment too that you mentioned that you use?
sure. When you start off, it doesn't cost that much to get started if you've got a closet that you can start in. And I know people that make very good money and still work out of their closet. But you need a microphone. You need a way to connect it to your computer. And then, like, if you're using a closet with a lot of clothes, the clothes actually kind of baffle the sound, so it gives it a nice sound if you have a lot of clothes in there. And then little by little, you build up to get better stuff. You have, hold on, let me change this. Like, I started in my closet, and then if you look behind me, that's my studio where I actually work. This is where I teach. That's where I work. So I've got a recording space in there. and the room inside is fully treated. So no reverberations. If I clap my hands in there, it just dies. Because you can't have any of that echo or anything like that on your auditions or your work anymore. So really you can get started price-wise. $300-400 can get you up and running as far as equipment goes. Then there are free pieces of software. There's one called Audacity that a lot of voiceovers use, and it's a free audio editor. And you just need to learn how to do that. You need to learn how to record. You need to learn how to edit. You need to learn how to clean things up. And I know, like for my son, that's his favorite thing, the technical aspect of it. He loves that part. It's thrilling to him. I love it too, actually. But that really speaks to him. More so than actually performing. He's like, I'll just edit that for you, Dad. So all that stuff requires either like I learned how to do all that stuff because there's amazing YouTube videos out there. It's a world where almost any question you have can be answered. You can be shown how to use almost any product, right? So if you do your own research, you can learn how to do that. If you are taking one-on-one classes with somebody, absolutely, they should be able to help teach you how to record and how to edit and how to send in something that's going to be competitive. You need to know what everybody else's stuff sounds like to be able to get work. Now, there are smaller things. Like I cut my teeth doing video games on really small video games out of Eastern Europe. Find it games, they call them. You kind of step into a scene and you have to find all these things, and there's a little story. You do those, and what's nice about those is you don't need a demo. You don't need to have a resume. They just like, your audition. So you can start building with that smaller stuff where you're not competing with the best of the best because they don't want that work. That work doesn't pay enough for them. So there's plenty of work to build yourself up. There's a thing called casting call club, where people that do small animated products and animated projects, sometimes they're just fan projects. Sometimes they're going to be filmed, or sometimes they're college students that are in the arts. And you can find work there to really get an idea of what it takes to audition and what it takes when you actually get the job. Did I answer your question at all?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right.
I want to talk about pivoting, and also obviously you're successful. You're doing these gigs. Talk me through, and I love when people are talented and pay it forward, and then teach those skills. So you mentioned in your bio that working with ages from 3 to 70. How did you go about starting and working and mentoring other individuals?
I made a friend who actually, she books incredible. I mean, she makes a lot of money doing voiceover, but she always gets coached for every audition that she does. And I started coaching her, and she just started telling other people, hey, he's really good at directing me. So people started coming to me for that. And then a couple studios in town said, hey, we've got classes that we teach here. We'd love to have you come in and teach. So it kind of grew organically I didn't do a lot of marketing for that. I do now, but it kind of grew just from me actually helping a friend out, basically mentoring her and, listening to her auditions and saying, hey, how about this? What about this? And for me, I did it because knowing my own process by telling someone else what they should do, or why I don't like something or why I do like something, made it easier for me to work because I now know how my brain works. So I love teaching, and it makes me a better voiceover artist every day.
Fantastic.
And
Would
I
you
have, hmm?
go
Go
ahead?
ahead. Oh, I was saying, as far as mentoring, I actually have, so I teach but then I have people that I mentor, and some of them I teach them and mentor them. They just call them, they go, hey, can we do a mentoring session? Okay. And now a lot of times that'll be, hey, I've got this thing. They want me to do this. Is this enough? Do you think this pays right? Or I've got a question about what kind of agents in town. So a lot of people do mentor and just help people navigate the business, because it is so much done from, at home alone. Unlike most jobs, you really need to put the effort in to reach out and find people that will help you. And luckily, people are very, very, very giving in this business.
I love it. Talk me through how important constructive criticism is. You mentioned
You,
being able to direct, and people pointed that out, that you're really good at directing them and getting what you need out of each read. How important is constructive criticism, or the ability to take constructive criticism?
you absolutely have to be able to take constructive criticism or redirection. A lot of times it's not even criticism. A lot of times what happens is, let's say I give a read and the director's listening and they like it, but they thought, that made me think we could do something a little better. So what you have to do is be whole in and of yourself. So when you're actually working, when you have the job, let's say you're doing a commercial. If you do a commercial, you might read it the right way the very first time, but they're still going to have you read it 200 times. And it makes you second guess yourself when you don't know any better. When I first started, I didn't know any better, and I was convinced that they kept having me re-record, or they kept changing things because I was terrible, and that's not what it is. You have to give yourself over to the director in any kind of theatrical endeavor until you're hugely famous. That's the problem is, we hear famous people talk about their experiences on films. Well, they're famous. They can dictate things, which we can't. You want to be the person that you came in with a idea A, and they said, you know what, we'd actually like W, completely different. And you're able to make that switch. You have to just have an open mind and be willing to understand what they want and give them your version of it. And if you can't take criticism, you just can't do this job, because it's so much of it is being corrected, being again, being rejected, being redirected. You just have to have faith in yourself that you're doing a great job, and they're asking you to make changes because you're so good that you made them think of something new.
I like that. That's a great way of looking at it. Networking. How important has networking been for you?
Very, very, very important. My first 6 or 7 years, I really didn't do it. I didn't really understand that there was a community out there. I kind of knew that there was, but I didn't know. I worked out of my garage. I worked at my garage at the time, and I just kind of did my work, and then whatever. Networking, as far as just even networking with other actors bring you up. They talk to other people. It's good to be known, and there's lots of ways now with social media. I do a lot of stuff on social media where I don't post a lot, but what I do is I comment a lot on other people's things if they need help. And for me, now anybody that reads that, even if they don't know me, they've associated my name with something good. So if a casting director reads that, or what I'll do on like LinkedIn or something like that, is if there's somebody, a casting person that I'm interested in that I've never met, I'll follow their stuff and kind of talk about, they have a vacation, and tell, hey, I've been there. That's really great. And they just start to build a relationship, even though they don't know you. And they hear your name, all they're going to think is, I know that name. I don't know why, but I have good thoughts about that person. So you're already you're already a step above somebody they've never heard of at all. As far as getting to know casting people, it's so important. It's just like any other job. It's so hard to compete solely on talent. People want you to be somebody that they'd like to work with. And that's what you're fighting
I'm
a lot
glad
of
you
times.
mentioned that because um we talk about, especially in a gig economy, when you are a positive individual, you're smiling, you're fun to work with, you can take direction. Wouldn't you rather
Mhm.
work with somebody like that than someone who's coming in going, hey, check me out, I got my blah 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 degree, I'm out of this school, and I've been doing this for a while. No one wants to work with anyone who's cocky. So
They they
you
don't.
know
And
being a
especially in
real
this
person
business.
helps.
I had the good fortune a couple of weeks ago. I did a pilot, and I didn't know who else was cast in it. And I went in and we were doing the live, which is great. The animation's sometimes done that way. Normally you record by yourself and everything. And everything you do, it's you in a booth by yourself, and the engineer and the director are on the outside, and they tell you what to do when you go through it. Well, here all the actors were in the room, and I go in, and it was top tier. It was some of the most famous voiceover actors in the business, way way above my pay grade. But they're now meeting me as an equal, and I loved watching them work because here are people that work every day. They've been on a couple of them. One woman is on basically every cartoon you've seen for the last 10 years. She's at least been a guest star, if not a lead. And they were nice and helpful and throwing out ideas. They were people you wanted to be around. They gave off an energy of, isn't this great that we get to do this? And no one made any comments about they didn't know me or anything like that. That didn't make a difference. They assume you're here because you earned it. And people are just very giving. The beauty of being a performer, and when I was a stand-up, this was especially true. No matter how rotten my day was, when I stepped in front of that audience or when I step in front of a mic, whatever happened outside that booth goes away. At least for that half hour or whatever it is. It is a place where you get away from whatever you had a really bad day. You got in a fight with your parents. You got a fight with your wife. You owe money, whatever. You go in and you forget about it for a little while and you play. We get to play.
Sounds like
And
the
to
best. That
me,
sounds like the best part of voiceover work is getting lost in being a someone else, being a different character, hyper focusing, and forgetting about the problems that you're dealing with. I wanted to ask
it's
you.
wonderful. Mhm,
Obviously, you mentor others. Is there a mentor that
mhm.
comes to mind for you that helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. With stand up, I'll go, back to that. I met a guy, his name was Gary Kern, and I was just working locally, and he toured all over the country, and he's took me under his wing, and he got me work. He would tell me, after I did my spot, what's going on, what happened with you here. He just And I was very bad. I mean, I would do shows where I literally went into my hotel room and cried. I was like 22 and frustrated. And I had somebody that took care of me, that said, look, we all go through this. You are funny. You are this. And I've got a couple people that mentor me with voiceover, that I'll call them up, and they'll say, look, this is great. I love what you do. I have a couple like audition buddies that are very good, and I'll send them my audition, they'll send me theirs, and we'll talk to each other about it. And sometimes we'll work on them together. Uh, and that sense of community and knowing that there's someone that you can turn to and ask important questions, and sometimes embarrassing questions. Why aren't I working more? That you can admit people to your mentor, hey, I'm having a hard time with this. And there's two or three now that I use. And in fact, the thing that I just did with all these big names, was through one of my mentors. She was directing it. She called me up. She said, "Hey, I'm directing this project, and would you like to audition for it? I think you'd be right for it." I wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't know this woman, if she and I didn't have a nice personal relationship, and if she hadn't seen so much of my work through mentoring me, through coaching me too. She knew inherently that I could do this. And it's just good to have. As you're saying that, I just heard from somebody that I've mentored for 3 years. He just wrote, I just see it on my Facebook Messenger. "Hey, do you have time tomorrow? I've got a couple questions." Of course.
Paying it forward. I love
Um,
it. I have two
yeah,
questions,
it's yeah.
and then I'm
It's
going to pass
and
it along and open it up for a Q&A from some
okay.
of the students. Is there a mantra that you live by or a saying that you use daily?
Um, and this is from when I was a writer, and this, let it suck, let it be bad. If you're too afraid of letting it not be good, you're never going to get anything great. If you're not willing to take that chance of having it fall on its face, you're just going to be boring. And you see that when you watch TV shows or something. You watch Saturday Night Live sometimes, and they're not daring, they're not taking chances, so the sketches aren't good. I'd rather have one great one and 9 bad ones than 10 mediocre. Who cares? So I tell myself it's okay. There's no audition is perfect, no job is perfect. Yet there is no such thing in this. It isn't math. And we get it into our heads that we want it perfect, and people obsess about that. And that's not what it's about. And the biggest thing is, if you're having fun while you're recording, the people listening and deciding who to hire hear that, and they want a piece of that. So you need to take that. That is aside from the techniques and your acting and all that. But if you underlying that is, "I love what I do," that is going to serve you very well with getting work
Love
and
it.
getting through this business.
Last question is there if you could go back and tell your younger self, with all that you've kind of experienced from education to voiceover to stand-up comedy,
Mhm.
is there a piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
I absolutely would. I wish that I had taken myself more seriously when I was younger. When I started to do stand up, it was kind of a thing. I was doing that. I didn't really say, "This is my job. I am a company. I have to market myself. I have to do all these things to get what I want." And I didn't, for years, I just didn't work hard enough to get what I really wanted. I didn't allow myself to want things enough to work hard. You have to take yourself seriously. You have to look at yourself as if you owned a small business, and you're the store. Um, so I wish I could have gone back and said, yes, this is fun. Yes, you're having a good time, but really you should be working every day, writing every day, practicing every day. And when I started to practice all the time and write a lot more, my last 5 or 6 years of stand-up went, the difference was night and day. And as I've gotten better at voiceover, and it is again, night and day difference. How much I work, how much I get booked, how much I enjoy what I'm doing, because I take myself and what I'm doing very seriously. And it doesn't matter what other people think about what you do. And always, 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 if you want to be an actor and you're taking acting classes, you're auditioning, you are an actor. You are an artist. Doesn't matter when people like out here in LA, people are like, "Oh, what have I seen you on?" "Oh, you're not an actor then." It's not the way it works. Right? If someone paints at home and has never sold a painting, they still call themselves a painter, right?
Absolutely.
So
I
you
wanna
can't let
wanna
other people's
ask you,
opinions. Mhm.
what I lied. One last thing. Up to this point, would you say that you've put in your 10,000 hours to master your craft?
I would say I have put in my 10,000 hours. I don't know if there's ever a time when you actually master your craft, because there's always something new that you discover, some little hidden part of yourself that you'd kind of push down through being told to be quiet in school, being told to sit down, being told to think a certain way. The thing with acting and dance or painting or any artistic thing is you have to go against all that teaching that kind of held you down growing up. Because ordinary life, society needs us to fit inside a box, and you need yourself not to. You need to remember what it was like when you were 8 and when things were exciting. And my check-in throughout my life, throughout my career, for the last 30 some odd years has always been, how if I could go tell my 12, 13-year-old self what I just did, how would they think of it? What would they think it was? Would they think that's really cool? And then I think, yeah, they would. And then, because sometimes I get down and I feel like, and then I'll write down some of the things that I've done, meet people I've met, people I've worked with, that are very famous. And I think my 13-year-old self will be over the moon that I got to do this, that I opened for this band, or I worked with this comedian, or I worked with this actor.
I
And
love
you
I
just
loved
need
how
to
you
keep that
mentioned
positivity.
I loved how you mentioned the fact that you constantly have to learn. There's new software, new things, new recordings, always being in education and appreciating the craft. I think is of an extremely valuable piece of information for anyone who's pursuing anything, any craft.
Anything,
Um,
any craft.
yeah. So
Major movie stars still go take acting classes.
yeah.
They
So
have acting
always a
coaches
student.
on set. You're always a student, and your whole life is being a student. And
Got it.
don't close yourself off. Be willing to, if you sell shoes, there's an art to selling shoes. There's an art to being a CPA. Once you lose the fact that there's more to learn, life gets really boring.
Totally understood. All right, let's turn it over to some questions out of the group. I see Presley's got the first hand. Go for it, Presley.
Yes, I have a question for Michael. And I know we just all got back from the SAG strike and the writers' strike. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on about AI taking over, Hollywood, like, with not just only with actors, but writers, directors, and anything? Like, what is your honest answer?
My honest answer is, I think a lot of it is inevitable, because major studios, movies cost so much money now, $200 million. They're looking to cut any kind of cost. And to be 100% honest, executives, and they're like this in every business, executives feel that everybody beneath them really doesn't need to exist. It's just them that are important. So executives in this business, they don't think writers really do anything. They don't think actors really do anything. They think the important work is all done by them, the decision makers. So if they can save money, if they can get rid of, I used to work for the company that makes Pro Tools, if you know what that is. That's a music software. And I used to write for them for a little while. And I remember interviewing a producer, a record producer, and he's like, I love drum machines. That way I don't have to hire a drummer because they're a pain in the ass. And I'm like, oh, that's horrible. So will eventually AI take over a lot of stuff? Yeah, if we let it. AI is getting better every day. What we need to sell as artists is that the human touch is important, and they're never going to be able to match that. And
Very good point.
understand, yeah.
Great point. I'm going to go to Daniel and then to William.
All right, thank you. As an aspiring writer, as well as like a person to get into the animation field, what tip or advice can you give me on that?
How old are you?
Old am I? Let's see. I think 22. Yeah, 22.
22.
Yes.
So you're at an age where the best thing that you can do as far as getting in to be a writer in animation is do an internship.
Yeah,
Look
like
for internships, because most of the people that I know that now run shows started off that way. They started off either working very low pay or working for free on a show. There's a job called a writer's assistant. And what you do is you sit in the writing room when they're pitching ideas, and your job is to write it all down. You don't pitch any ideas, you write it all down. But after a while, they get to know you, and they'd be like, hey, man, do you have anything? And then maybe they have to hire a couple people that aren't on staff to write a thing. They know you. Hey, how'd you like to write one? We'll give you a script this time. So don't look for the short-term money. Look for what's gonna build your career in the long term.
But yeah, like I had taken an internship, with Tink Tink Anime.
Great, that's fantastic. And how was the experience?
It's doing great. I'm still helping out with Tink Tink.
Oh, okay, that's wonderful. That's the thing to do, because you get to know the business. You get to know what they look for when they're looking at a script or when they're listening to an actor.
Okay.
I wish that I had time to do that behind the scenes stuff more. So that's, you're absolutely the right age to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I strongly encourage it.
Yeah,
Perfect. William, you're up.
Hey, William here. Also a aspiring voice actor. I've got some stuff under my belt.
Cool.
My question is, you mentioned earlier that you need to have like a job so that way you can pay the bills until voiceovers becomes like your full-time thing.
Mhm.
At what point
Unless you're
would
living at
you?
home with your folks.
That too. Unfortunately, no.
No,
Uh,
okay.
but my question is like, at what point can you really tell that voiceover is enough to pay the bills so you can quit the full-time job that was doing so?
I would say when you've got a year or 2 years, when you do your taxes, when voiceover made more money than the other, your regular job.
That makes sense.
Now, that doesn't mean every year you're going to do better than you did on your old job, but you've got enough work under your belt and you're good enough that you can take that plunge. But I know people that have, gone all in, and they're not competitive yet. So they make nothing, and they get very bitter, and it's very mentally damaging. You want to have something else to rely on aside from money wise, just kind of ego wise, until the job itself starts helping with your ego too.
I love that advice, William.
Right?
When the voiceover is making more than the other, that's when it's time to jump ship. Last question of the night, Giovanni.
Thank you.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
When you mentioned about if you have like a pitch idea for some stories, then what are some of the best places that take those kind of stuff?
So where do you go to pitch an idea?
Where do you go to pitch an idea? Well,
Yeah.
here's the thing is, and it's been explained to me by my friends that are writers, in their view, everybody has ideas. Not everybody can write them down. So if you've got an idea that you'd like to pitch to somebody, the best thing to do is write it up. And now with social media, you could, if it's a cartoon or something, you can make little shorts and put them on TikTok, right? You can do that yourself, even if it's just stick figures, or even if it's just audio. But what you want to do is actually have product. You can't just say, I've got this great idea where somebody would do this and this and this, and then not have anything already written to show it. it used to be, I'm not sure the way it works now, but let's say I went to Disney and I wanted to pitch them a show. I would have to have the pilot, another 6 episodes, and then another 10 episodes where I had the plot done. 6 episodes I wrote completely, and then another 6 to 10 where it's like, and then the rest of the season would go like this. So they know it's not just a one-off idea. But the best thing to do is rely on yourself. Write for yourself. And if you can, create for yourself.
Oh, okay. Did that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So not just having an idea, putting it down, getting intricate with it, writing it out completely. So when someone reads your idea, they don't have to ask questions. They know exactly what you're talking about because you've put that much time in and thought into the script. So that's what you need to work on, Giovanni. Michael, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I want to wish you continued success in the voiceover realm. If indeed anyone has any further questions, can I filter those your way if they are being too shy tonight? Did I lose you, Michael?
No, it's muting me. I don't know why, because I didn't do it. Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have any questions further down the line, you think of something or something comes up, please send it to Brett and have him send it to me. I will answer your question. If I don't know the answer, I'll find somebody who does.
Perfect. On that note, everyone, have a fantastic rest of your evening. Thank you again, Michael. Have a wonderful evening.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Night, everyone.
As we wrap up today's episode, we hope you've been inspired by the conversation you just heard. Before we sign off, it's crucial to acknowledge the role of Yes I Can in making Breaking the Biz a reality. Yes I Can, a transformative program dedicated to empowering young individuals with disabilities through education, advocacy, and mentorship, stands as a beacon of innovation and progress. This podcast is a testament to the program's commitment to fostering talent and providing platforms for meaningful conversations. Through Breaking the Biz, Yes I Can continues its mission of empowering voices, breaking barriers, and shaping a more inclusive and accessible world. Remember, each episode is not just a story shared. It's a step forward in the collective journey of growth, learning, and empowerment championed by Yes I Can. Thank you for joining us on Breaking the Biz. Until we meet again, keep turning dreams into reality and spreading positivity through every action. I'm your host, William Felber. See you next time.